there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. No one can control your mind, right? And then again, it's like if you think it, you're starting to create that neural pathway of maybe you can do it, And then if you say it out loud, maybe somebody can help you with it.
Welcome to Momentum Now by MVP, a career-focused podcast that delves into the stories of seasoned professionals, charismatic leaders, and passionate catalysts. Join us as we explore their career achievements, the challenges they've overcome, and their advice for young professionals of color navigating a fulfilling career journey. Today, our co-hosts Bob Brooks and Karen McFarlane speak with accomplished diversity, equity, and inclusion executive and modern civil rights activist, Adonica Black. Adonica shares how to gain access to life's changing opportunities, the impact of being impeccable with words, and overcoming personal adversity to live a positive and fulfilling life.
Everyone, I'm so excited for today's podcast. I am your host, Karen McFarlane, and I'm joined by my co-host, Bob Brooks. Hi, Bob.
Hey. And
today we are welcoming Adonica Black. Now, Adonica is a woman after my own heart because she's got a lot going on. She is an attorney, global director of diversity, equity, inclusion, a rule of law champion, an international keynote speaker, a community leader, and a modern civil rights activist. I love it. This whole portfolio career that you have going on. Welcome,
Awesome.
Adonica.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Bob. Very happy to be joining you all.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. Tell us about your journey and how you got to where you are now. What are some of the big milestones?
Yeah. Okay. I could start from the beginning. I will start from the beginning because I think, all of our experiences shape us, right? So I am a dual citizen. I was born abroad in Kingston, Jamaica. And I think from the very beginning, I've had a kind of dual lens because of that. My mom was in medical school at the time and had me abroad, and then I came to the United States 2 weeks old as a citizen born abroad. So I've always kind of had this idea about different identities, different cultural perspectives, living even in different worlds. And I think that's really contributed to how I've developed as a person. And kind of fast forward from that, I went to law school and focused on international law and business. And again, I think that pulls from my interest in identities and equity and the ways that they all come together. And I was in practice and litigation for a while and then decided that I really am much more interested in business and maybe the business aspects of the law. So that's when I joined my current organization, Lexus Nexus, and currently leading our diversity, equity, inclusion globally. So I think it speaks to my story.
What are the biggest challenges you're seeing now today, whether it's at Lexus Nexus or just overall when thinking of our audience of MVP fellows, the students that we support as MVP? What are some of the big challenges that are top of mind?
Yeah, I was so excited to learn about your MVP fellows and the work that they're doing. And I remember when we were chatting, what really stood out to me was the mission around access and opportunity. And it stood out to me because I've actually said those two words together in other contexts. And it just made so much sense that you're doing this work with your fellows to advance their access and opportunity. And so I think that access and opportunity is truly the challenge. It really is the goal of making sure that our world is accessible to everyone and everyone has equal opportunity in the real true sense of those words.
Adonica, I need to go back for a second because you talked about being from Jamaica. right?
Mhm.
So that's, my parents are from Jamaica too.
Very proudly.
So I just need to create that link immediately. All right.
Absolutely. I mean, Jamaicans will let you know who they are. It's
I had
very
to come back.
clear our heritage.
I had to come back. Okay, so we had to just
Yeah.
acknowledge, Jamaica, big up. But you also talked about, like the, because you are essentially an immigrant, right? Although you said you came when you were two weeks old,
Mhm.
but you grew up in that family, and I know that has a different dynamic in terms of how you view the world, you view work. How did that affect you growing up? And do you see any type of differences as you've gotten older and into the workforce?
Yeah. Even as you're talking, Karen, I hear the accent coming out a little bit. Like when we start to see each other, you know, family. Um, it's so funny because whenever I do share that with people, I tell them I'm a first and a second generation immigrant, which I think is so
Mm,
it's not common, right? Because I was born in a foreign country, so I do have that perspective. But also, my parents were born in the United States. That's how I became a citizen born abroad because
mm,
their parents were immigrants. So I
okay.
end up being kind of like first and second generation immigrant. And you see it definitely in just so many aspects. I'm also a first generation college graduate. And so, even in that process, kind of helping my family understand what is that process of education and then them helping me because I think that education has always been a very important ideal, but the actual system of education in this country was novel to my parents. Um, so I think that plays a lot into the work that I currently do because I have seen it personally and I've seen, I've had the benefit of great education and I've seen where the system may not catch everyone, um, and where there may be inequities if you don't have the right direction. So again, when you would talk about access and opportunity and you think about the fellows that you're working with, and I also have a fellowship program and fellows that I work with, it really is trying to figure out what are you dealing with regard to a system and how do you work within it and also how do you make it better because there are systemic inequities that exist that need to be challenged and addressed too.
And those are particularly prevalent in the legal realm, right? And
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about the program that you're running? And I've had the benefit of seeing it a little bit on the inside and meeting some of the fellows and joining one of your programs last year. I think it was last year. But and it was amazing. So I would love for you to talk about that a little bit.
I'm happy to. So I am the director of our fellowship program titled, very long title, the Lexus Nexus African Ancestry Network and Lexus Nexus Rule of Law Foundation Fellowship. And the fellowship is an extension of our organizational commitment to one, eliminate systemic racism in the legal system, and two, build a culture of inclusion and diversity within our organization. And so the program was launched in 2021 in partnership with our employee resource group, the African Ancestry Network, a Rule of Law Foundation, which is dedicated to advancing the rule of law across the globe, and the Historically Black Colleges and Law School Consortium, which consists of 6 law schools in the United States that serve a historically Black community. And we've also partnered with the National Bar Association, which is the largest association of Black attorneys globally. And the shared goal has been to advance the rule of law by specifically evaluating and eliminating systemic racism in our legal system.
It's such a huge charge, by the way.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
Well, and what's awesome is, I had an opportunity so there's a couple things that I think are really awesome as an outsider, right? Looking at this program, which is one, of course, you're engaging law students, right? You're engaging young people in this process to help help solve tomorrow's problems, even the ones that they didn't even create, which is just huge in and of itself, making them part of the solution. And secondly, they're tackling very specific issues, like they're identifying, tackling specific issues, working through this. I think it's 9-month or a 1-year program, and then coming up with solutions. And then when I saw them each present them during the Equity and Law Symposium, and they presented to Soledad O'Brien, which I thought was amazing in the year that I went, right? And she treated them as, she was not a lightweight on them, right, at all. But it was so impressive to see how they think, how their perspective changes as Black people who are affected by specific things within this system. And I think that
Yeah.
that's so incredible to witness, for them to pursue, to witness, and then, learn from going forward. And I think that program is amazing.
Thank you so much. It's so true. And it's interesting to hear it from someone else, because I think I'm so deep in the work of the program that you can sometimes it's just nice to hear someone else get the vision and get the bigger picture. And even as you're speaking about it, things start to click for me as well, in terms of like, okay, this is how it really is all coming together. So a couple of things you just mentioned there that I think is really important to highlight. While we work with the Historically Black Colleges and Law School Consortium, all of our fellows are not Black, which I think is really interesting, because everyone is affected by inequities in the legal system. When the rule of law is not advanced and supported, it's been proven statistically with data and empirical evidence that we all suffer. So we really have been inclusive in that way. And in terms of the fellowship focus, we are thinking it systematically about these systemic issues, because to your point, these are not issues that they have created, but they are issues that they have to suffer and deal with. And again, it just brings it back to, how does this inequity in our system impact everyone? Not just a specific ethnic background, not just a specific identity. Everyone is impacted when the rule of law is threatened. So I'll tell you a bit about our projects and how we've thought about that to make it more tangible, because it's a huge goal, right? Eliminating systemic racism in the legal system. That's the charge of our country for the last 400 plus years, hopefully, one of them, right? And we've thought about it systematically. So we've broken it down into 5 projects, and we got to this place over 3 years, because we've had now 3 cohorts of fellows. And we started with just a premise of a question, and we asked our fellows to propose ideas that they had to work towards this goal. And we specifically told them, with the breadth of LexisNexis's talent and resources and technology, what would you do to address systemic racism in the legal system? And we asked them to write a proposal of how they would use LexisNexis to help advance their objective. And so we had amazing fellows in our first year cohort that proposed exceptional ideas. We had 12 fellows in the first year, 2 from each of the 6 HBCU law schools. And then in our second year, we had the same prompt. We got 15 fellows that year. So we grew. Actually, no, excuse me. We had 18 fellows that year. We had a lot of fellows that year. It grew by 50%, because the schools and the students saw, oh, this is different, and this is something that we can really make an impact with. And then after that, we had like 30 projects that we really had to sit back and think about, what do we do with this? How do we really do something more than just a 9-month stint that will actually create impact in our system? And so with our leadership team within our organization, we evaluated the projects themselves, and what could we as an organization do about them? Because we had to think about, what are we best positioned to support with regard to our technology, our talent, our resources? And we identified 5 projects that we felt like we could really make an impact on. And then we adjusted our model so that we had teams of fellows working on each of the projects rather than individuals working on an individual project. So again, thinking just impact wise and strategically, how do you incrementally attack and affect a systematic problem?
So amazing. I could talk about this all day, but I know Bob has.
Yeah.
Me too, for sure.
Adonica, I'm wondering where you find your energy. And I think those of us who are disciples of diversity face a reality that there's been some headwinds, some pushback somewhat recently, right? We've seen defunding in certain states. Earlier this year, we've seen lawsuits pop up. We've seen pausing of programs that are DEI within some institutions or organizations. Where do you find your energy to continue to be a passionate disciple as
Mhm.
well as push to make change? And do you have any thoughts about the recent pushback that we've seen?
Yeah. I really like how you put that, Bob, with regard to being like a disciple for diversity. I've never heard that, and I'm gonna take that with me moving forward. I'll give it proper credit, but I think it's true because disciples don't always have an easy story, right? So most likely they have a very hard story, but they're committed. And I will say for myself, it's definitely not easy, and my energy is definitely not always 100%. So I think in those moments where we're all human, and there have been moments, especially in the last couple of years, with the headwinds, as you put it, against diversity and the pushback, that you do step back and think, like, am I doing anything here? Am I making a difference? Do I need to continue doing this work? And I've had those moments myself, and I've really had to give myself the space to even have that internal conversation. Because I think that for me, the first thing was, well, don't think like that. Like, keep going. Don't be deterred. And then you really have to think like, no, you have a right to evaluate, does this still serve you? And for me, after going through that process, I just personally feel like I can make a difference here. And I would be very remiss in my life if I didn't try.
Right.
Um, but I think it's absolutely true that as diversity disciples, as you said, we have to be very strategic in how we make a difference and thinking about how we face the challenges that are coming in the diversity, equity, and inclusion world.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where I'm able to really pull on the other parts of my background as an attorney, for example, and thinking strategically about even a case, right? How do you look at an issue and attack it and think about the issues that you spot, right? That's kind of how you're trained to think, issue
Yeah.
spotting, and then approach to address those issues. And I do think as a profession, as a discipleship, diversity champions do need to be strategic and proactive, because I think our opponents are very strategic and proactive. And I don't think that there will be a decrease in these headwinds that we're facing,
Mm-hmm.
but there are ways in which to address it and be in front of it, right? And I hearken back to, for example, the civil rights litigation in the 60s that were very strategic in terms of just cases that were brought incrementally to challenge a specific law, and then open up a question that wasn't even considered before, and then bring another case to challenge that question. And so I think it would be wonderful if, as a profession and as a area of focus, we start thinking in that strategic way. And I think, just to add to that really quickly, it's going to help all of us, because I've seen already in the ways in which diversity professionals have had to adjust and really be mindful of their language and of their processes and of their programming. And I think it's actually better, because we now are thinking more about how does an equitable lens serve everyone, and it makes our processes stronger. So I've seen it in our business. We've gone through, for just a very discrete example, we are implementing structured interviewing, which means that for any candidate that's interviewing with our organization, they will have a consistent process as any other candidate interviewing for the same role. That's something that came about through an equity lens, but it makes our business stronger because you should be evaluating all of your candidates consistently. So that's an example of how I think that this will actually help us to become more effective.
It's just important for business. Diversity is important for business, period.
Absolutely.
And the businesses that embrace diversity, we know through a number of studies, and I've seen it firsthand. If your company has clients or customers from diverse backgrounds, then the leadership team should embrace diversity. For if not for anything, for one thing, it's great for business. It's obviously
Exactly.
the right thing to do. If we could pivot for a minute, and then Karen, you jump in too. You touched on something that reminds me of when I was in my 20s, which is head trash. Where we, sometimes it's reflection, sometimes it's head trash, where we're not as positive. How do you push away that head trash that maybe was there in your 20s or maybe there last week? How do you stay positive, and how do you push forward when those voices sometimes turn negative?
That's such a great question. It's funny you said head trash. You're giving me all these good like sound bites, but it is trash. It's like, well, okay, a couple things. I will reference my mother. She is a very intentional person with her words and her thoughts. And she's always really instilled that in her children. And to the point where she'll say, like, don't say something you don't mean, because sometimes you'll say, like, oh, I'm dying today, or I'm like, whatever it is, and she's like, immediately take that back. Watch your words speak life over your life. And so that has really helped me think about just my words and my thoughts and being very intentional about that. And then that other piece of head trash, I think, happens, and you can rebut it with the people you have around you, because sometimes we all have challenges and thoughts and moments where we feel like we're not living up to what we would hope. And the right people around you will help you see you in a real way. And so I have so many people in my village that I have to thank for just always putting a mirror on me and helping me to see, oh no, look what you've done and look who you are, and remind you of that.
Yeah, positivity, it's critical. And the people that you have around you is an important part of maintaining and fueling positivity without question.
Adonica, how did you find your way? Right? So, you have all these wonderful accolades behind you, but there had to be this moment where you were just like, as you were growing up, did you always know what you wanted to do, or was there some inspiration that came about, or you just fumbled? Like, I fumbled my way into what I was doing. So,
Oh, that's funny.
For
Don't we
some
all
people
do it a
right
little
now
bit?
who are like, they're in college. They may have declared, they may not have declared. And they're just like thinking about their future, right? And they're looking at you and they're like, oh my gosh, she's done all these amazing things. How will I ever get there? How did you get there?
That's so real, Karen. And it's funny because, to be 100% authentic with anyone thinking that, I don't feel like I'm there yet, right? And so I think everyone should feel like it's a journey, and even I still feel like that. But to tell you how I got here, right? Not maybe not there yet, but
Not
here.
there, but here.
A couple things, I think. So we can get really personal here, and I'm happy to share more of just my story. So you were like, oh, do you always know? actually did always know since I was about 7 years old that I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And I always had a sense of justice in a way that I was just like, right is right and wrong is wrong. But there's obviously nuances and kind of what justice means in that equation. And I am a big sister of a large family. And I would always, I'm the oldest. So I feel like I'm always the kind of like judge and jury of like the different things that are happening between family members. And that was like from the beginning. So for me, that's kind of where it starts. But then also, when I was 14, I was diagnosed with brain cancer. I'm a brain cancer survivor. And my diagnosis was I had a very poor prognosis, a 5% chance of living. And I survived, and there's a lot more to that story. But at a very young age, it just put so much perspective in my life around challenges, period. So whenever I face a challenge to this day, I just think about like you've done and you faced much more serious things. So what you're facing now puts it in perspective, honestly, for me. And it's one of those things that I'm actually very grateful to have had that experience at such a formative age, because I really do take that perspective with me into all forms of my life. And then in terms of like, how do I get here, right? With that perspective, and also just truly the miracle that I had in terms of surviving, there's certain values that I have that I just, values and interests, I'll put those together, that are my like guiding principles, because I don't think I had a plan of, oh, I want to get here and do this and then do that. But it's like, take that next step. Take that next step. That would be the best thing I could share. And I actually remember as a child in elementary school, we used to have these morning lessons. And I remember this one lesson from maybe 4th or 5th grade that has always stuck with me. And it was about a young boy on a camping trip with his dad. And it was late at night and he couldn't see. He went to use the bathroom in the woods, trying to get back to the campsite. And he's yelling to his dad, I can't see. I don't know where to go. And he's like, well, what can you see? And he's like, I can just see the step in front of me. He's okay, take that step. And that story always stuck with me, literally and figuratively. Even I've been driving in Jamaica and it's been extremely foggy on that highway 3000. And I was like, all right, just drive that next mile, like that next kilometer, and just keep going. And literally in life, you just take that next step. And so that would be the best advice I could share is know your guiding principles and don't compromise on those things. And then just take that next step towards it, because people will come into your life, opportunities will come into your life that you may not have even imagined. I know for me that has happened. And it really is just sticking to kind of who you are.
Well, Adonica, thank you so much for sharing that very personal experience. And I definitely can't imagine, but it is so clear that you've used that to motivate you. Obviously, what you just talked about, guide you, empower your moves. And so that's just an amazing story of how you take something that, I don't know, could have changed. I mean, it has changed your life forever, but just in such a wonderful, positive way that you're using that experience. And so thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
That just blew me away.
Yeah. Puts it in perspective, doesn't it? Puts everything in perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to stop complaining about the small things.
No, I mean, we always complain about the small. I mean, I do too. I don't want to leave here with this unrealistic picture, right? We're all human.
Yeah.
But I just have to remind myself, like in those really hard moments, I'm like, okay, how hard is this comparatively? But we all have those days for sure.
Well, just like I was talking about earlier, I have this I guess this virus going around. It was horrible on Saturday, but today is much better. So it's just those incremental positive
right?
steps.
It's those moments. And some days it's just a day where you're like, all right, I just don't feel like it today. And it's okay to feel like that too. But you just gotta like let that be a day and not just your disposition. I think that's where it becomes hard.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about the kinds of advice that you'd have if you were wrapping up a talk with a group of young people who are about to embark on their career, right? They're about imagine the graduation day or something
Mm.
like, right? Like, and what are some of the key ingredients to success, do you think? What are some of the things
Oh,
that you would point out to always do this or never do that?
wow.
Yeah.
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
And a really excellent one. Okay, so let me try. um, I think one of the biggest things, again, I said it already, but it really is speaking over your life. What you want, speak that. What you don't want, don't speak about that. I really think like even though I'm in law, I'm very interested in science as well, and I like to read about neuroscience things from time to time. And it's been proven, right, that you create neural pathways all the time. And so, literally, when you're speaking things, like you're creating a neural pathway to either get what you want or get what you don't want. So, to me, I feel like that's one of the things I would say is just speak what you want in life. Um, and then, secondly, I think as best as you can, don't put limits on yourself. I understand where those limits may come from. And I understand that it's a mental challenge slash sometimes mental trash, as Bob put it, that we allow those to exist. But there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. No one can control your mind, right? And then again, it's like if you think it, you're starting to create that neural pathway of maybe you can do it, you know? And then if you say it out loud, maybe somebody can help you with it. So that would be, I think, two things that I would just highly recommend for anyone in life. And then I think with regard to what not to do, um, I would say just don't compromise your values as best as you can. It's not always easy, but I have seen people compromise in ways that they've come to regret. Um, and I feel like it's pretty absolute in terms of there will just be at some point you might find the compromise comes with great regale, but at some point I've always seen that regret. So as best as you can, I think again we're all human and things happen and we have to correct for them, but as best as you can, know who you are and try not to compromise that essential piece. Like if it feels wrong, it's wrong for you.
Hmm.
Fantastic.
That's stuff I need to take. I need to take for myself in 2024 as a
And I gotta
whole
take it for
adult.
myself too sometimes. Again,
Yeah.
I think it's like helping, having, like I said, having people that will remind you of who you are,
Yeah.
because that's real. And sometimes, even for myself, I'll do or deal with certain things, and then someone will remind me, wait a minute, that's not who you are, right? And it centers you again. It centers you again.
Yeah.
So it all comes together in that way.
Know your guiding principles, you said, and I wrote that down. That is so true. That is so, so true. And personally, I recite my guiding principles every morning.
That's amazing.
Oh wow.
I call it, it's been presented to me as a way of making myself, making my being.
I love that.
And well, and you said it. So knowing your guiding principles and knowing what's important, putting life in perspective.
It's so true.
Really great advice. Yeah.
If I could share, in undergrad, I had a class, and whenever people ask you, like, what was your favorite teacher? I always talk about my undergraduate professor, Tony Brown at Duke University, and he led a Leadership 101 class. And he actually made us write a paper called Your Personal Leadership Map and study ourselves as, like, empirically study yourself, which kind of blew my mind as a college student because he literally made us read different philosophers, different thought leaders, and evaluate ourselves based on the framework that they've laid out in their studies. And so we literally had to go through books and research about ourselves. And to think about yourself in that way really is unique, because then we had to write a paper and write empirically about our value system and where it comes from and who we are. And I go back to that still. And it's still, I mean, you evolve as a person, but some things really still remain with you. So I love, Bob, that you have those principles that you know how to repeat, because some people don't even know yet because they haven't really evaluated themselves.
And you said earlier, speak the life you want to lead is the way I've internalized it. And I believe that to be true as well. Be impeccable with your word. One of the 4 agreements, a great book. That's something else that you mentioned that very much resonated with me. Karen, should we have some fun and do rapid fire questions, or do you want to do wrap up first, or how do you want to run this?
Let me do my sort of wrap. I mean, one big piece for me is I have some homework to do. So we want to keep it real. All right. I did do like this personal marketing plan type thing in the beginning of the year, but I haven't revisited it since like March. So I need to create some discipline around that. But anyway, let me see. I had so many like notes I was writing down, but
me too.
Some of the things that really stood out to me is that, well, first of all, Adonica really liked this diversity disciple thing. So we're going to lead with that.
I like that. That's so real, Bob, because again, like discipleship is not, it's like a labor of love, right? Like and it's not,
indeed.
I mean, Jesus' disciples lived very tough lives. So
indeed.
I wouldn't say I'm anywhere near that, but it's just discipleship is not easy.
No.
Well, the diversity disciples, they have to be strategic in how we make a difference, right? In DEI, although our energy may not be 100% every single day, we just focus on what makes us committed, right? Does this still serve you? And can you make a difference? So those are 2 questions you should probably ask yourself. How does an equitable lens serve everyone, right? That's the big question we should always be asking ourselves, because when we focus on equity first, it makes everything better. Be really intentional about your words. Your words speak life over your life. I really love that. Right. There's a great song called Speak Life to it too, which reminds me of that. Rebut the head trash, another Bobism, right? By surrounding yourself with the right people. And you talked about this, developing your guiding principles, and don't compromise, and always take the next step. Don't put limits on yourself, and don't compromise your values in ways you will regret. Did I capture it?
Kaboom.
You
All
did.
right.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, that was.
I think it was you.
Yeah. I also want to look up Tony Brown, see if he's around, and see if he'll.
He's still around.
Karen.
He's at Duke University. I think he may have retired, but he's still super active.
We'll go find him.
Yes, he's and he's not just my favorite professor. He literally is a favorite for a generation of Duke students. And it's funny because I was at a meeting and they asked that question, who's your favorite professor? And like 4 people that had never met in the room all said Tony Brown, which is pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah, look him up.
Yeah, next time I'm in Durham, I'm going to go visit him without question. Yes. Yeah, or at least attempt to.
For sure.
Want to have some fun?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so rapid fire questions, quick answers, top of mind stuff. There's just a few here. What was your favorite subject in high school?
Chemistry, because I knew what to expect with the reactions. So okay, like do this, you'll get that. And I liked that.
What was your least favorite subject in high school?
Calculus. It's funny you asked because I literally was just thinking about this the other day. Just very quick side story. On Netflix is now Young Sheldon, and Young Sheldon went to Texas Instruments, and that made me start thinking about TI-83s. Weird way my brain worked. And I just never understood, like, I just didn't get it. Like, why are we doing this?
That's
I
funny.
But maybe I just didn't get to that math pay grade. So
That's funny.
that's it.
I always struggled with that as well. What's the best advice you've ever received?
From my mom, speak what you want from your life.
Nice. Have you ever received any advice that you would not embrace? What's the worst advice you've ever received?
Yeah. I don't know if there's like a specific quote or person, but any advice that I've received that was fearful was never serving for me. And I think it always came from the person's own fear. And I just don't embrace that.
Right on. What's your greatest superpower?
I think listening, even though I've been talking a lot today, I'm a pretty good listener.
And your greatest weakness, and how do you navigate that?
Oh gosh. Greatest weakness. Like I said, I'm a big sister. And so two, I would say, is one, feeling like I have to always be in charge and letting people just take things and do it. I'm still learning that. And I think it plays out in life too. I think that's probably it, actually. It's just that piece of letting people take things and, good or bad, be responsible for it. Especially when you feel like you can help them, but sometimes you shouldn't.
And then the big wrap up. What's your why? Why do you do what you do?
That's an amazing existential question. I'll give you one more nugget about myself. My name, Adonica, is a name that my parents gave me, Donald and Veronica. And they ascribed a meaning to it. And the meaning is the change. And so I've always had that in my mind growing up in life. And so for me, my why is to be the change, but with that, like a good change.
You are the
Wow, wait.
change.
You are the change. You are the change. I have one more question now.
Yes.
What's your favorite Jamaican food?
Oh my God. Escovitch fish, for sure. For sure. Even though I love every and anything, Escovitch fishes, I will eat it every day if I could.
I'm going to be Googling that right now.
Oh, it's the best. It's the
I'll
best.
send you some restaurant recs. It's good.
It's the best. Although my favorite's two peas, but it's two peas and Escovitch fish, so we on the same page.
Okay, I love it. I love it. This is good, but I can't eat that every day.
Well, well, there's that.
Oh, that's funny.
Adonica, yeah, you're fantastic. Thank you for
Yeah.
being part of our program and helping us just give light to the topics that matter most, the things that matter most, and providing some advice to our MVP fellows and everyone that listens to this podcast.
Thank you both for doing this work. It's amazing. So likewise, you're just as fantastic. And I know you all are doing this in addition to your very heavy responsibilities professionally. So thank you from the community, honestly.
No, thank you. I know you said you're not where you want to be, but there's a lot of people who want to be where you are right now. So thank you for sharing your insights and helping them get there. So very on brand for you, Adonica. I can't wait to see what you do next.
I love it. I love it. I'll have to talk to you about my brand here for sure.
I'm here. Hit me up.
Thank you.
All right. Until next time.